This is my original 3D printer kit, the Geeetech Pro B. I don't know about you, but I could use a fun project to work on right about now, and what better thing to do than to modify or upgrade your 3D printer. Now this isn't just any 3D printer, this is the very first 3D printer that I ever built. Back in 2016, my buddy Colin and I bought the same 3D printer kit, and we spent a whole weekend assembling it. There were roughly 100 little bags of different sizes of screw and small parts that had to be assembled, and the manual was somewhat comprehensive, but there was a few things missing here and there. By the end of the weekend, we were able to start extruding some plastic, but as you probably know, it doesn't end there. I spent the next 6 to 8 months tweaking and trying to fix things on the printer to get the perfect print. It was a definite learning experience. But I thought it would be interesting to compare this printer to some of the printers that we're using today, go over some of the modifications that I made in the past, and get it up and working better than it ever had before. Now I haven't done a 3D print, other than the one I did the other day, in a long time on this machine. So I thought it'd be interesting just to run a print and see what happened. And here's what we came up with, and boy, that benchy is looking pretty sad. This is an off-brand PLA of some kind, and I don't have a part cooling fan currently on this printer. I did have one at some point, I'm not sure what happened to that. You can see the smokestack is pretty much just a big blob of plastic. All the rash up here around the corner, driver noise, there pretty much isn't any overhang. All the stringing, not a very good looking benchy. We can definitely do better than this. So the current print quality isn't great, to say the least. But to be fair, I really don't remember all the modifications that I made to this 3D printer, and by the end I was pretty much only printing ABS on it, and I had made my own enclosure. And it consisted of this very inexpensive end table with some paperboard on top of it to add for the extra footprint of the printer. I did have some plastic pieces on there to keep the printer from moving around, it kind of sandwiched it in place. I also had the LCD screen out here in this holder that has since been broken probably half a dozen times. And I created these 3D printed hinges so the acrylic would slide in here, and then I could lean the whole thing back and set it on the wall if I wanted to work on it. I just used some giant nails for the hinge pins. And I just made the cube out of some spare acrylic I had laying around. I do have a little camera holder over here, a spool holder on the top, and a place in the back where you can feed the filament in. But basically, it's just an acrylic cube. So that gives you kind of an idea of how I was using the 3D printer. Fun fact, this machine was the one that I printed all of the parts for the log 3D printer out of recycled ABS plastic. Now let's take a look at the printer, see its current state, and see how it's functioning at this time. There are a few things that are not quite adding up. So there's a couple things that you're going to notice right out of the gate. For starters, it is an all acrylic Prusa clone. It's your typical i3 Cartesian machine. And the LCD screen is no longer attached to the 3D printer. I had it on the outside of the enclosure. It used to set up here on top, and there is a thick layer of dust all over everything. It does have a Mark 8 style extruder and a clone BL touch sensor. I really don't remember how accurate that sensor might have been. We have the Mark II heated bed, the classic PCB with a glass sheet on top. I'm just using glue stick. The part fan is still attached, it was just hanging up here on the top. I actually didn't notice that until today. When I did turn it on the first time, I did notice what version of Marlin it was running. That could definitely use an update. We're all the way back on 1.1.1. And I gave it a very clever name, bravo. Over here on the power supply, it's a 15 amp supply. It's definitely no speed dimming when it comes to heating that bed. And nowadays, if I saw this, I would consider that pretty dangerous when you have your switch that close to your mains wiring. We'll definitely have to do something about that. And the part that's going to make most of you freak out, are you ready for this? The wiring. This is what happens when you're not equipped to make your own connectors and you just want your 3D printer to work. Silly me. So we'll definitely have to do something about that. Buried deep in that pile of wires is a Geeetech GT2560 mainboard, which isn't a terrible board. It does have the old A4988 drivers on it. Some of the heat sinks don't look like they're in the best shape. We don't have a whole lot of extra pins to play around with here, but we can probably definitely make use of this board. I also did create this housing up here on top that holds a micro switch for filament runout. It did work, but I don't remember using it very long. Also, I recreated the top mounts for the smooth rods and the lead screws. I was holding that lead screw bearing up here captive, which is not a great idea looking back on it, so we'll have to look into those. And probably the first place that we're going to start is to rework this whole extruder carriage. It's made out of some thin type of metal, but there's a whole lot of slop here, and there's not a lot of places to mount different things like your BL touch sensor or your part fan. So that's going to be a huge upgrade for this machine. And you can see these 3D printed parts right here. I moved the M8 nuts that were riding on these threaded rods. Yes, these are threaded rods, not lead screws. Because they were so bent, I just freed the whole carriage and let it ride on top of these parts, rather than having that lead screw move it from side to side, getting all that Z-banding. The Z-banding on it was atrocious. Just when I hit the home button, you can tell just how wobbly these rods are. So that's not going to get us very far at all. We got to change something out there. The machine does still home, heat up, and auto level, so we have something to work with here, but we got a lot of improvements to make. So we definitely have our work cut out for us here. Now this is going to be a video series. This one is just to get you started, get us on a level playing field so we know what we're working with. But this should be a lot of fun, and you never know, we might learn something. So stay tuned for all of the upgrade videos that follow. Hopefully you found this entertaining. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. If not, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.